Hi, it's Hope and welcome to the video. This is going to be my January mid-month wrap-up, which I feel like I've said this in every video recently, but it's insane that I'm filming this video. There is no way that we are in the middle of January, but it's true because I'm filming this on the 17th and it's going up on the 19th. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the first 12 books that I've read in the first 15 days of January. Yes, 12 books in 15 days. I still can't quite comprehend that number myself. But I will just go through these books, talk a little bit about them, what I rated them, and all of that. So the first book, the book that I started off the year with, was Beastly Bullies by Evie. And this is it's kind of like a companion to a different book. But essentially in Beastly Bullies we follow Eleanor, who things have happened in her past that caused her family to lose money, so she now lives with her sister after, for a brief time, having to live with her uncle, and that's kind of not really that relevant, but it kind of is. And essentially Eleanor is being bullied by these two boys at school, and also casually is in love with her guidance counselor. So it is a reverse harem featuring the two bullies and the guidance counselor, which, yes, it sounds as weird as it is. And this I gave a 3-star. It was just okay. There really wasn't that much chemistry between the characters, which that's what really threw me off, is it was just for example, the ones bullying her were it was almost immediately as soon as they started interacting more, it was oh boom, we like you now. So yeah, it was an okay read. I definitely don't regret reading this at all. I literally had this finished 2 hours into January. It was a really quick read. The next book I read was Desperate Measures by Katee, and this is the first book in the Wicked Villain series, which essentially are Disney villain retellings where the hero almost gets the villain. So Desperate Measures is Jasmine and Jafar, and essentially it's Jasmine's father is this big guy in this city, this rich guy in the city, and then Jafar ends up essentially buying Jasmine from her father, and it's smutty. It's a really good read. It also features a light female male sex scene, not in the relationship, but just a singular sex scene, which I'm trying to think if I've read that dynamic before, and I don't think I have. I just really like this. This was a fun, quick read. This was a recommendation on Clint from Reed's Readers request, as on a live stream on the 1st. He may or may not have read that part of that smutty female male scene on the live, and I was I need to now read that book. The next book was Trick 6 Venom by Penelope, and this was a reread. I originally read it back in July of 2021, but somebody that on a Discord was also reading it, and I was like, hey, do you want to buddy read it? I kind of wanted to reread it. This essentially follows Clare and Liv, and they are kind of almost enemies at school. Liv is from the opposite side of the tracks. She's being raised by her 5 older brothers, and then there's Clare, who to a lot of people would have a perfectly normal life, but not, and the two of them are enemies, and just it's them growing closer, growing feelings develop, and they end up starting a relationship, and it's a bully romance. It's sapphic, and it's really good. And I gave this a 4-star. It was a reread, and that's exactly what I gave it the first time, although there was definitely a few things that I forgot that made me literally have to almost jump out of bed and go, how did I forget that? Which I love it when you forget things and then you reread and you're oh my gosh, yeah, that happened. The next book is All of Us Villains by Lynn, Herman, and Amanda Foody. This was a book I originally wanted to read last year, but I didn't, but I now finally had got to it this year. And this so far is my only 5-star read of the year so far. This essentially, we have this, every 20 years there is this tournament for magic in the town of Ilvernath. But we have the 7 families of Ilvernath who put their who each put a competitor into the competition, and they're all teenagers, and essentially the 7 teenagers fight to the death. Whoever wins their family ends up controlling the high magic. There's common magic, which is I don't really even know how to explain, but this high magic is very powerful, very important, all of that. The only thing about the tournament that is different this year is that there was a book published, I think it was about approximately a year prior, that spills the secrets of the tournament and brings it to the media. And we follow 4 main characters as well. They are all people taking part in this competition. And I love this book. As I've already said, it's a 5-star. I love this book so much that I borrowed it from my library originally. But then I happened to be reading it when we were traveling to the nearest city that has a bookstore, which is about an hour and a half away. And I was originally going to go, okay, for 1 book. I made it about 100 pages into this and was like, I need my own copy, so I bought it. And yeah, I love these characters so much. As it says, all of the villains, they all are villainous. They're all morally gray, and you can slowly see as the book goes on them becoming more villainous, more power hungry, more knowing what they want and not caring how they get it. And I love that about these characters. My favorite character is honestly probably Alistair. I don't know why, I like the broken and damaged characters, and he's probably the most broken and damaged out of all 4 characters. But I could spend a million years talking about this because I loved this book. But yeah. The next book I read was Plant Barbarians by Ruby Dixon, and if you know what this book is about, you know what this book is about. This is essentially, we have these group of women that are kidnapped from their homes from random places in the world, on Earth, and they are taken by this weird alien race that ends up putting them on this this icy planet, and essentially almost leaving them there, and they'll pick them up later. Essentially that kind of thing. They're almost like cargo being just placed there for shits and giggles. But then we have the main character of Georgie, who decides to explore this planet that they are put onto, and she ends up meeting an alien. I cannot remember for the life of me that alien's name. And it ends up being a alien romance where Georgie falls for this alien, this big blue alien with... Do I need to say more? A big blue alien. Sorry, grayish blue I think is the exact term, but big blue alien. This I gave it 3.5 stars. The only reason I picked this up was because it was a buddy read with a few people on Instagram. And I'm casually trying to see if I can fit the next book in to my February TBR, because it honestly, it's so trashy, but it's so good, and I'm dying to read more of the books. Definitely, we'll spread them out, sprinkle here and there. The next book is Feirce Like a Firestorm by Lana Popovic, and this I DNF'd after about 68 pages. This is the sequel to Wicked Like a Wildfire, which is somewhere back on this shelf here. And essentially we follow these twins, Melina and Iris, and they essentially have these abilities. One can turn music. What can they do? I don't even remember. But they each have these 2 separate abilities. They're told by their mother not to use them, but they end up using them, obviously, and then they end up finding their coven, their family. And that's all I can remember of the first book, and this book I just didn't like. I don't like the writing style, I don't really like the characters, I have no connection to the story, thus I DNF'd it because, well, I was wasting my time almost reading a book that I knew I wasn't gonna like. And I will probably be getting rid of these books, this book and the first one, as I never plan on trying to repick it up, as I know it's just not for me. The next book is Secrets We Hunt by Dana Isley, and this is the second book in the One Night series, where essentially each is a series of standalone that each book is one of these different members of a friend group. And Secrets We Hunt is Wes's story, and essentially Wes ends up traveling to, is it Greece, for his best friend Jack's wedding, and essentially he ends up stumbling upon Zoe, who is a girl from his past. They knew each other a decade prior when they were teenagers, and now they're adults. They haven't seen each other in 10 years, and Zoe is there because she is best friends with the bride, and it is literally Wes and Zoe having a like kinky night that ends up leading to them maybe forming a relationship later on. And again, as I said, it's literally just slightly kinky. It's like I think it was like 89 pages. It was really good. I gave it 4 stars. I will read anything by Dana Isley, so like, are we really surprised that I read this on release date? Are we really surprised I gave it 4 stars? Literally, I think the lowest I have rated a Dana Isley book is 4-star, and that's like a more of like, it's probably a 5-star, but if it would have been longer, it would have been a 5-star type thing. Did feel like you could have like there could have been just a little bit more character development, but that's like my only complaint. The next book I read was City of Bones by Cassandra Clare, and this I'm not going to talk that much about because I have an entire 24-hour reading blog on this book. I read this entirely in 24 hours for Ashley from Ashley's Media Addictions Mediathon, where like it was a 24-hour readathon where I ended up spending, what it was, 14 out of the 24 hours on live sprints, and I read this book the whole time. Well, this and another one. But this essentially we follow 15-year-old Clare Foray, where as she finds out that she is a shadow hunter, and shadow hunters are essentially humans with these angel abilities, like they have angel blood coursing through their veins that gives them these extra abilities. They end up using these abilities to fight against demons, and there's also these things called downworlders, which are like vampires, werewolves, warlocks, Seelie and Unseelie, and this is just the start of this amazing epic world that I love. I own every single Shadowhunter book, right? I think I own everything except like the little extras, which I want to get. But this is like, this I always say is like a core book for me. I love it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I literally wouldn't be a reader without this book, honestly. So it was great to do a reread of it. I'm rereading the whole like Shadowhunter series, like the Shadowhunter Chronicles, for the By the Angel along, hosted by Becca from the Becca Fowl. And so I'm going to be reading one Shadowhunter book a month. Some months more, as if there's a new release, I'll go back and read some if I need to. But yeah. The next book is Learn My Lesson by Katee Robert, which is the second book in the Wicked Villain series that I've already mentioned. And essentially, Learn My Lesson, we follow Meg, Hercules, and Hades, as Hades owns this BDSM club that is shown in Desperate Measures, and Hades has essentially for the last 10 years has had this like deal with Meg, where essentially they've been in this like dom sub dynamic, and Hercules ends up making a deal with Hades and is being thrown into this dynamic, and it is like a throuple, so like all three of them end up in a like, they end up starting this like relationship, and it is full of smut. It has like, it honestly, it does really well in my opinion. It does talk about that like dom sub dynamic and how different versions can be, and this I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it a little bit more than Desperate Measures, solely because I think I just like the characters a little bit more, and maybe like the dynamic of the characters a little bit more. So yeah. The next book is Temperature of Me and You by Brian Zepka, and this I gave 3 stars. This essentially we have this boy named Dylan who just lives in this small little Pennsylvania town, and he just kind of wants a boyfriend, and when this boy named Jordan stumbles into his life, they end up becoming friends, and there's that. But then there's also that Jordan runs at a very exceptional body heat of 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and then a couple weeks later Dylan begins to do the same thing, and it's like a contemporary with like a sci-fi twist of the fact that both Dylan and Jordan end up having like not quite fire abilities, but like their bodies run at extremely high heat, and they do have the ability to like create fire and all of that. But this I just didn't like because of like, for example, the way that this fire thing happened was like, okay, that makes sense. But then everything else beyond that, I'm like, okay, why? I almost DNF'd this book, honestly. I honestly probably should have. But the ending was like okay enough that I liked it. 3 stars is honestly a little bit like high. But that's what Cawpile gave it. I gave it 5 across all, which ended up being a 3-star. Which still is good. But I wouldn't recommend it to anybody unless like this is exactly the kind of book you're looking for. I know that Clint from Reads Reader, who I've already mentioned, ended up DNFing this book, and we have pretty similar tastes, so I'm like, yeah, I probably should have DNF'd it. The next book I read, which is on a little bit of a happier note, is Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Lani Taylor. This I gave a 4.5 stars. I loved it so much. It was like so close to being a 5-star, except there was like 1 or 2 little things off. So essentially with this we follow 17-year-old Peru who lives in Prague, and essentially she how do I even describe this? She essentially she's an art student in Prague who knows what this thing called the Elseworld is, and the Elseworld is essentially almost like a different world that there are these portals through like various places that you can enter through, and she has this family called the Chimera in the Elseworld. She thinks that they are the only people of their kind to exist that she just happens to be raised by. And yeah, and then there's also a seraphim named Akiva who ends up stumbling into Karu's life, and that's very, very, very basic. I really like this because of the fact that there's almost like there's no plot. There's like no big bad, essentially. Like we do have some things going on, but this is definitely set up for book 2, which I'm dying to read. I'm finger crossing I can get both of the next books in the series on my TBR for February. But I really enjoyed like Akiva and Karu. I'm trying to think of what I can say without spoilers, because I could go deep into the plot and all of that. I don't really know what else I can say. Books that I love, I struggle to describe what I like. But I just really enjoy this. I love figuring out what Karu is, because spoiler alert, she's not human. I loved learning about a kind of like a side character named Madrigal, who I really enjoyed her story and how it connects back to Akiva and Karu. And yeah, I really just don't have anything else to say. And then the last book I'm going to be talking about in this video is Lore by Alexandra Bracken, which I gave 2 stars. I genuinely, like, I should have DNF'd this book. For the last about 100 pages, I was going, is it too late to DNF? Is it too late to DNF? The answer was, no, I should have DNF'd it. This, we have, every 7 years there's this thing called the Aegon, where 9 gods walk the earth as mortals, and their descendants are kind of almost out to get them. And because if you kill the god during the Aegon, you become the new god, or something like that. And we follow Lore, who, what does she even do? We follow Lore, who's our main character, as the goddess Athena shows up at her doorstep wounded, and a boy from her past named Castor, who she thought to have been long dead, is alive. That's all I could tell you about this. In all honesty, I don't remember anything from this really, and I literally finished it like 2 days ago. So yeah, this is a library book. Thank God. I swear if I would have bought this book and then given it a 2.5 star, I would have been so fucking mad. But thankfully it's a library book, so I can take this to the library tomorrow and just rid it out of existence. Yeah, I don't, it's not a bad book, it's just not for me. There's too much going on and so little time, and yeah. So those are the books that I've read, the good, the bad, the just okay. Let me know what you have read so far in January. But I really hope you enjoyed this video, and bye!